The wind that night moved like something alive. It rushed over the hills, whistled through the iron fencing, and slammed itself against the stone walls of the Dlamini estate as if it wanted to be let in. The city lights in the distance shimmered beneath a pale winter sky, but up on the ridge where the mansion stood, the cold felt sharper, lonelier, almost personal. At the front gate, a girl stood trembling in a thin sweater that had long stopped being useful. She could not have been more than 18. Her name was Amahle Ndlovu, and she had spent the last 3 hours walking with one small backpack pressed tightly to her chest, following the road upward because every other road behind her led back to the same place she had sworn she would never return. By the time she reached the main house, her fingers were numb, her lips were dry, and the fear inside her had become so heavy it almost felt calm. She lifted her hand and knocked. No one answered. She waited, then knocked again, softer this time, as if apologizing for existing. Still nothing. The front door had not been fully latched. When the wind pushed against it, it opened an inch, then another. Amahle stared at the dark line of warmth inside the doorway and whispered to herself, "Just ask. If they say no, you leave." She stepped inside. The house was enormous, silent, and full of polished wood and old sorrow. A chandelier glowed over the entrance hall. A long runner stretched across the marble floor. Somewhere deeper in the house, she heard the faint clink of glass. Then a man's voice cut through the silence. "Who are you?" Amahle turned so sharply that her shoulder struck the door. At the far end of the hall stood a tall man in a charcoal sweater, one hand resting on the back of a chair, the other holding a glass of red wine. He looked to be in his late 40s, maybe early 50s. His face was composed, severe, and tired in the way of someone who had once cared deeply about many things and had long since decided caring was too expensive. His name was Tendai Dlamini. People in the city knew him as a businessman, a widower, a man who donated money to schools and hospitals but rarely attended the ceremonies with his name attached to them. The newspapers called him respected, the staff called him quiet. Those who knew him best understood that quiet was only what grief sounded like after many years. Amahle swallowed hard. "I'm sorry, sir," she said. "Please don't be angry. The gate was open, and I had nowhere else to go." His eyes moved over her wet shoes, the backpack, the shaking in her hands, then back to her face. "This is not a shelter," he said coldly. "You need to leave." "I can work," Amahle said quickly. "I can clean, wash dishes, cook, anything. I don't need much, just one night. Even a chair would be enough." Tendai set the glass down with a quiet click. "You came to the wrong place." Amahle tried to stand straighter, but the cold had reached too deep. "Please, sir, I'm not asking for money." His gaze dropped briefly to the dark mark near her wrist. "You're running from someone." Her breath caught. Before she could answer, another figure entered the hallway from the side passage. A middle-aged woman in a neat cardigan with silver-threaded braids and kind, alert eyes. She took one look at Amahle and then at Tendai. "She's freezing," the woman said. This was Mama Tandi, the housekeeper. She had served in that house long enough to know where the silver was kept, where the grief lived, and exactly how far she could push the man who paid her. Tendai did not look away from the girl. "People survive worse." Mama Tandi's voice softened, but only a little. "Yes, but they do not always remain whole afterward." Amahle lowered her eyes. "My name is Amahle," she whispered. "Amahle Ndlovu." "Where is your family?" Tendai asked. She hesitated. "My mother is gone." "And your father?" He was never there. Tendai's expression did not change. Then call the police if someone is threatening you. Amahle gave a small, broken laugh that carried no humor at all. Police do not always listen the first time. Not to girls like me. For the first time, something flickered behind his eyes. Not tenderness, not yet, but recognition of a truth he wished were less familiar. Amahle's fingers tightened around her backpack strap. "I won't disturb anything," she said. "Just let me stay till morning." And then, because the silence felt unbearable, because desperation had burned away pride, because her body was so tired that honesty was easier than pretending, she added in a smaller voice, "Please." Before we go further, tell me in the comments where you were watching from, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Tendai said nothing for several seconds. The house was so still that Amahle could hear the ticking of a clock somewhere deeper inside. Then Mama Tandi stepped closer, placed a folded blanket over Amahle's shoulders, and said gently, "Child, come away from the door before you fall." Amahle looked from her to Tendai. He exhaled slowly, as if annoyed by something he could not argue with. "One night," he said at last, "you will eat in the kitchen. You will sleep in the small room near the laundry hall. You will not wander through this house. And when the morning comes, you leave." Amahle blinked, almost unable to believe she had heard correctly. "Yes, sir." "And do not mistake this for kindness." A tear slipped down her cheek before she could stop it. She wiped it away quickly, embarrassed. "Thank you, Mr. Dlamini." He turned and walked away before gratitude could reach him. Mama Tandi led Amahle toward the kitchen, where warmth rose from a soup pot on the stove and the smell of onions, garlic, and bread wrapped around her like something human. Amahle stood near the doorway, as if she were still uncertain whether she was allowed to breathe there. "Sit," Mama Tandi said. "I can stand. You can sit." Amahle sat. A bowl of chicken stew was placed in front of her, followed by thick bread still warm from the oven. She stared at it for a second too long. Mama Tandi noticed. "Eat." Amahle lifted the spoon, then stopped. "May I save half for tomorrow?" The older woman's face changed. "There will be food tomorrow," she said softly. Amahle nodded, but her eyes filled anyway. She ate carefully at first, then faster when hunger overruled caution. From the dark passage beyond the kitchen, Tendai stood unseen and listened. He listened as Mama Tandi asked, "Is someone looking for you?" Amahle answered after a long pause. "One man. The one who bruised your wrist." Another pause. "I fell." Mama Tandi let that lie sit between them for a moment. Then she said, "You do not owe me a better story than the truth. But you do not owe me the truth before you are ready either." Amahle's spoon stilled in her hand. No one had spoken to her like that before, not without wanting something back. After supper, Mama Tandi showed her to a narrow but clean room with a proper bed, folded towels, and a small lamp glowing beside the wall. Amahle stood frozen in the doorway. "This is too much." "It is a bed," Mama Tandi replied. "Do not insult a bed by sleeping on the floor." That brought the smallest smile to Amahle's mouth. Before leaving, Mama Tandi paused. "You are safe for tonight. Let tonight be enough." But safety is a difficult thing to believe in when fear has lived in your bones for too long. Amahle slept with one hand on her backpack and woke twice in the dark, listening for footsteps that never came.
The next morning, she rose before dawn. In houses where survival depended on usefulness, sleeping late had never been permitted. She folded the blanket, washed her face, and followed the smell of coffee to the kitchen. Mama Thandi was already there, measuring tea leaves and humming a church chorus under her breath. "You walk like a shadow," she said without turning. "I didn't want to be in the way."
This house has too much way and not enough life. Amahle didn't know whether she was allowed to laugh, so she only smiled. A few minutes later, she asked carefully, "May I use the kitchen before I go?" Mama Thandi studied her. "For what?" "To make breakfast, as thanks." Now that was unexpected. But something in the girl's face, some mixture of dignity and fear, moved her. She nodded once. Amahle worked with quiet concentration. She found potatoes, eggs, onions, tomatoes, and a small bunch of spinach. Soon the kitchen filled with the smell of frying onions, warm butter, and fresh bread on the skillet. When Tendai entered, drawn by the unfamiliar comfort of it, he stopped short in the doorway. Amahle turned and immediately looked alarmed. "I'm sorry, sir. Mama Thandi said I could. I was going to clean everything before I left." He looked at the stove. "You were told to leave in the morning, not open a restaurant." Her head dropped. "Yes, sir." Mama Thandi, without turning from the tea, said, "And yet the house still stands." Tendai ignored her. His attention was on the plate Amahle had set aside. A simple breakfast of eggs with tomatoes and onions, crisp potatoes, and buttered bread. "You don't have to eat it," Amahle said quickly. "I just didn't want to leave with food unfinished." That sentence did something strange to the room. Not because it was dramatic, but because it sounded like a person used to leaving in a hurry. Tendai picked up the fork and took one bite. He paused. It was good. Not fancy, not styled, just good. The kind of food made by someone who understood hunger from the inside. Amahle searched his face anxiously. "Is it bad?" He set the fork down. No. Relief passed through her so openly that Tendai looked away. Then her phone buzzed. The sound was small, but Amahle flinched as if struck. She pulled it from her pocket. The screen lit up briefly before she turned it over. Too late. Tendai had already seen the message. "I know where you are." The kitchen went cold again. Mama Thandi put down the spoon in her hand. "Who sent that?" Amale's throat moved. "No one." "No one does not write like that," Tendai said. Her silence answered him. Finally, she whispered, "His name is Peki Zizwe. People call him Becky." "Your mother's husband?" She nodded. Tendai's jaw tightened. "How did he get this number?" "It's my phone, but he used to pay for it when he wanted to know where I was. Sometimes he would switch it off, sometimes on. He liked knowing I could disappear only when he allowed it." "Give me the phone." Amahle stepped back. "No." It was the first sharp word she had spoken in the house. She looked ashamed of it immediately, but did not lower her hand. Tendai regarded her in silence. Then he said, more evenly, "I am not taking it from you. I want the number." With trembling fingers, she unlocked the screen and showed him. He memorized it, then called one of his security men at the gate. Less than 20 minutes later, the answer came. "There's a man in a blue pickup near the lower road," the guard said over the house line. "Claims he's looking for his stepdaughter, says she's unstable and ran away." Amahle had gone pale by the time Tendai hung up. "I need to leave," she said at once. If he knows I'm here, he'll cause trouble for you. He already is, Tendai said. That's why I should go. To where? She opened her mouth, then closed it. There was nowhere. Mama Tandi set a hand on the back of Amahle's chair. Eat your breakfast. Amahle shook her head. You don't understand. He'll smile if the police are there. He'll say I'm confused. He'll say I stole from him. He'll make me sound like the problem. Tendai stared at her for a long moment. He knew something about men who understood the power of appearances. Men who could stand in a suit and call cruelty concern. Men who weaponized calm because it looked respectable. Did you steal anything? He asked. No. Then sit down. She blinked. What? Sit. Eat. You are no use to yourself fainting in my kitchen. Something that might have been disbelief touched her face. Still, she sat. That morning, for the first time in years, the kitchen sounded more like a home than the grand dining hall ever had. By noon, Tendai had called his lawyer, a patient man named Sibusiso Kumalo. By afternoon, he had enough facts to know his instincts had not misled him. Becky had debts, a temper, and a record just clean enough to avoid real consequences. Not innocent, just experienced. Sibusiso arrived carrying documents and caution in equal measure. If she stays here, he said plainly, there need to be rules, clear ones, for her protection and yours. Amahle immediately said, I can go. No, Mama Tandi said. Tendai looked at the girl, at the bruise on her wrist, at the way she stood near doors instead of chairs, like someone prepared to leave before being told. Then he said, she stays for now. A simple written agreement was prepared. Amahle would assist with kitchen and laundry duties for fair pay, have the right to leave at any time, and sleep in the downstairs room until her identification documents could be replaced and safer arrangements made. When the paper was placed in front of her, she stared at her own name as if it belonged to someone else. Read it before you sign, Sibusiso said. I'm slow with legal words. Slow is fine. Unsafe is not. So he explained every line, and Amahle listened with full attention. She asked whether mistakes would get her thrown out. She asked whether she would owe money for food. She asked whether anyone could force her to return. No, Sibusiso said to that last question. Not if you choose otherwise. Amahle signed carefully. Something changed after that. Not trust, not yet, but structure. And sometimes, for wounded people, structure is the first shape safety takes. In the days that followed, Amahle moved through the house with gentle purpose. She folded towels into neat squares, opened curtains no one had bothered to draw, polished the breakfast table, and quietly rearranged the pantry so flour, rice, tea, and spices could actually be found without an expedition. She asked permission before touching anything. She thanked people for every small thing. She apologized far too often. Once, when one of the male staff muttered, "Girls like her bring questions," Tendai heard it from the hallway. He stepped into view and said in a voice so calm it embarrassed the man more than anger would have, "Then perhaps ask better questions." Amahle had looked down at the floor after that, but Tendai had noticed something in her face. Surprise, yes, but also the fragile beginning of relief. One evening she made jollof rice with stewed chicken and fried plantain, using ingredients she found in the pantry and instinct she had carried from her mother's kitchen. The scent spread through the house so warmly that even the walls seemed less formal. Tendai came to the doorway, pretending he had not followed the smell. "I can make a plate for you," Amahle offered. "I have a cook."
Yes, sir, but this is already made. Mama Tandi turned away to hide a smile. Tendai accepted a small serving. The first bite stopped him. It did not taste like luxury. It tasted like memory, like laughter near a stove, like evenings before loss had become the loudest thing in his life. My mother used to say food should remind people they are still loved, Amahle said quietly. He looked at her then, properly. And did it? She gave a small, sad smile. Sometimes only for the length of a meal. But even that helped. If you like this story, subscribe for my channel for more beautiful stories. After that, Tendai began noticing things he had avoided noticing for years. The music room no longer felt entirely abandoned because Amahle hummed while dusting the shelves. The morning light reached farther into the breakfast room because she kept opening the curtains. Mama Tandi laughed more.
Even the old cook, who had first treated her with suspicion, admitted grudgingly that the girl had a gift with seasoning. But healing is never a straight road. One windy afternoon, while folding linen near the lower staircase, Amahle heard a sharp banging somewhere above. Then again. A loose window maybe, a shutter. She hesitated. Tendai had been clear from the beginning. Do not wander, do not go upstairs uninvited. But the sound continued, and years of being blamed for what she had not fixed pushed her feet toward the staircase before caution could stop them. The upper floor was colder than the rest of the house. The hall smelled faintly of cedar and thyme. At the far end, one door stood slightly open. Inside, sheer curtains whipped in the wind. A window had come loose. Amahle stepped in and stopped. It was a child's room, not messy, not living, not recently loved, but preserved. Too carefully preserved. A small bed neatly made, storybooks lined on the shelves, a pair of tiny shoes near a chair, drawings framed on the wall, a music box on the desk, a photograph of a little girl with bright eyes and missing front teeth. Amahle crossed quickly to the window and pushed it shut. As she did, the music box tipped. She caught it, but the lid sprang open, and a soft melody spilled into the room. "What are you doing?" Tendai's voice struck like thunder. Amahle turned so fast the box nearly fell again. He stood in the doorway, face drained of all warmth the past week had built. "I'm sorry," she said at once. "I heard the window. Snow was blowing in." "I told you not to come upstairs." "I know, sir." His gaze moved to the photograph. "This was my daughter's room." Everything inside Amahle went still. She looked around again, now understanding the careful order, the untouched bed, the silence that was not peace at all, but mourning. "I didn't mean—" "You had no right." She flinched, not dramatically, not loudly, just that small, trained movement of someone whose body had learned that anger often came with pain. Tendai saw it, and in that terrible instant he understood something that no explanation could have told him. This girl did not fear shouting because it hurt her feelings. She feared it because once, somewhere else, shouting had been followed by hands. His anger broke against that knowledge. Amahle lowered her arms slowly, ashamed of her own reflex. "I know you won't hit me," she whispered. She couldn't finish. Tendai looked from her frightened face to the little bed behind her. One daughter gone forever. One girl standing alive in front of him, asking the world for permission to exist. "Leave," he said at last. But the word sounded different now. Tired, not cruel. Amahle nodded and slipped past him. Downstairs, she began packing immediately. Not because anyone had ordered her to, but because wounded people often learn to leave before they can be thrown away. Mama Tandi found her with the backpack open on the bed. "What happened?" "I broke the rule. That is not an answer. Amahle wiped at her face. I went upstairs, into his daughter's room. Mama Tandi sat heavily on the chair. Ah. The window was open. I was only trying to close it. But I should not have gone. He was right. Did you mean harm? No. Did you take anything? No. Then stop packing like a criminal. Amahle looked miserable. I don't want to be another wound in this house. Mama Tandi's face softened. Child, that wound was there long before you arrived. You only touched the locked door. That evening, Tendai came to the small room. Amahle stood at once. I can leave tonight. He looked at the backpack. Did I ask you to pack? No, sir. Then unpack. She stared at him. There was a long silence before he added, Next time, if something is wrong upstairs, tell Mama Tandi. Do not carry the whole house on your shoulders. Amahle's eyes filled. Yes, sir. He turned to go. Then she said very softly, I'm sorry about your daughter. The hallway seemed to still around them. For a long moment he said nothing. Then, without turning back, he answered, So am I. It was the first honest sentence he had spoken about that grief in years. After that night, the house changed more noticeably. Not all at once, but enough. Tendai began taking tea in the kitchen instead of alone in the formal dining room. He asked Amahle once, awkwardly, almost as if it offended him, whether she had ever considered culinary school. She admitted she had applied to a college program but never sent the forms because Becky had torn them up. That was when something settled hard inside Tendai. The next day, without ceremony, he told Sibusiso, Help her reapply. Amahle protested immediately. I cannot accept that. You are not accepting charity, he said. You are accepting a chance. Try not to confuse the two. But why? He looked at her for a moment, then answered with uncomfortable truth. Because too many people watched you sink and called it fate. She had no reply to that. A week later, new documents were in process. A new phone had been arranged. The old number was gone. Becky